the Missouri Botanical Gardens. You may hear a little construction behind us. They are working on a new visitor center and probably some new greenhouses as well from the looks of it. And we really like coming to these botanic gardens because it gives us a lot of inspiration, not only for plants that we could grow indoors, but also outdoors as well. And we're also here for some architectural inspiration. And this is a greenhouse that really caught our attention. This reminds me of one of the greenhouses that I had seen in Asheville, North Carolina, that has been kind of sort of an inspiration, kind of like a cross between a house and a greenhouse, but we really love it. All the brick and some of the tall windows. It's not fully glass, it's glass on top, but really beautiful. Some nice landscaping as well. We kind of have our eye on the landscape plants because there's some cool things that we might want to plant in our own landscape. I saw some grasses down there. These plants are affectionately known as hairy ball plants. See, the monarchs have been on them. Balloon plant, hairy balls. It's like a Rorschach test. This is little bluestem, and you could see that it's kind of already going to seed. So it had flowered and now it's going to seed. And I'm not sure if this is a specific cultivar. There's a lot of cultivars. Oh, here. No, it's just regular little bluestem. There's one called Standing Ovation that has even a more vertical shape, but that kind of purplish red bottoms and that light blue stem, and then it gets this kind of purpley red top, I think is really attractive and goes a lot with some of the landscape plantings that we're doing at Flock. And then you see over here, that little grass in the distance that kind of has that side-swept look, that's blue grama grass, and that is pretty much about as tall as it gets, which is pretty short for a grass, because some of those grasses, like Sorghastrum nutans, like the Indian grass, can get up to 8 feet tall. And this one, you know, the blade of the grass is pretty short, and then it sticks up that long flower spike. So that's going to be one that is in our meadow. So I like actually seeing these plants in the planting beds, and from our small kind of excursion here the other day, we were noticing a number of plants that we've already have planted up. And the way that Missouri Botanic Gardens plants is almost like demonstration gardens. So they're like, okay, here's this species, here's this species, here's this species. So it may not look as beautiful, but it's also very good for us to learn from all that. Here's the rose garden. I can't tell you one cultivar from the next because I'm not a rosarian, but very tastefully, nicely done. And I think the roses are having their second wind, considering that this is like the fall time now. I wonder, they must have to bring these in or something.
From where?
From here, because they don't survive outside. Are you collecting the water lilies to bring indoors, or are you just
I'm
clipping them?
Clipping them.
Okay, so they don't overtake the whole...
Yeah, a little bit of that, a little bit so they don't, see how they're kind of like decomposing?
Yeah.
I don't want that to like just sit.
Schmutz in the water.
So we'll take them out when they're about done. The same with the flowers, we take those out once they're done flowering, because A, there's nowhere for it to go, and B, we want the plant to put all that energy into new stuff.
Right.
And not into new seeds.
What do you do with the Victoria water lilies? Do you have to...
In the winter, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the winter we actually just take them out and compost them.
Okay.
They're started new every year by seed.
Oh, great, right on.
So
Okay, cool.
Derek, I know, has been propagating some of them, and their flowers are underwater and the seeds are maturing, and so we'll pull those bags of seeds out when we pull out the water lilies, and then next year we'll start a new batch from that seed or from seed that we borrow from other botanical gardens.
Yeah, some folks have asked about having water lilies in our ponds, but they have a tendency to overtake the ponds, so we don't want to. Oftentimes people keep them in their own, in their pots.
In the water.
In the water, yeah, in pots. So this is like more of a tropical looking experience. There's your castor bean plants, which we have, but they're considered annual in this environment, in our environment. And then you have the canna lilies. So these are things that will not overwinter well here. So if you see these trees behind us, they're all different cultivars of Cercis canadensis, which is the eastern redbud. And they're native to North America, and there's become lots of different cultivars. What's really prominent about this tree is that in early spring, the flowers come out really before the leaves, and the leaves are really beautiful because they have these heart-shaped leaves. You also have ones that have cultivars that have red leaves, so forest pansy is one that I could think of off the top of my head. And we have a beautiful one at Flock. I think the cultivar name is called Appalachian Red. It's like some of the most beautiful reddish purple flowers that I've seen of any cultivar. But what I love about these is also the structure. So they don't get any bigger than about 30 feet tall, maybe somewhere between 15 and 20 feet tall. And the structure is really nice. It's very open. And if you see some really old formed ones, they get really gnarly, but still have this open structure. And I think this is nice for this place that I'm calling in Flock the interstitial, which is between the main forest and the meadow that we're planting. And you still have this openness. And we could plant even smaller shrubs underneath this, like viburnums and things like that, because viburnums don't mind growing in a little bit of shade. And again, like I said, in the spring, these don't get their leaves until a little bit later, so you have that light in the better part of the spring. But gorgeous plant, really nice pollinator plant as well during those early spring days. So this is a cool little section of the Missouri Botanic Gardens. Now, if any of you have ever looked up any type of plant or cultivar that you're probably growing outside or want to grow outside, you've often probably happened upon the Missouri Botanical Garden site, where it gives you a nice description and photo of all the various different kinds of plants. I mean, there's very few cultivars that they don't have, because sometimes you're just looking for a specific species or a specific cultivar of a plant, which is the cultivated variety of plant. And they have them all right here in person, which is really exciting to see, because when you get a chance to come to the Missouri Botanic Garden, this is the home gardening section, you actually see that plant growing, and you could say, oh, I might want that in my landscape, or oh, this is how it looks like as a mature specimen. So it's very nice to see. We found some grasses and some other plants that I was like, oh, we're either growing them or we want to be growing them. And you could even see firsthand whether plants are really good pollinator plants. Like, I think this is probably some type of salvia, and you could see all the honey bees are going crazy for it. Oftentimes that's how I want to purchase a plant. If I go to a plant garden center or nursery, if it's just smothered with honeybees, then it's like, okay, I want that plant in my landscape because it's a good pollinator plant. This is something new that I hadn't seen before. So this is pine-leaved penstemon, Penstemon pinifolius. So leaves like pines, right? Because Pinus is the pine genus. And Penstemon digitalis, Penstemon hirsutus, that's the beard tongue, hairy beard tongue and common beard tongue. We have a lot of that growing at Flock in our meadow, but this is a new one. I don't know if this is actually native to the United States, but it has these really nice pine-shaped leaves. I actually like to get plants like this, especially if I have like a fir or a pine tree or something growing over the top, and then having something in miniature that looks like that pine tree below. I really like having that kind of same type of leaf structure, but on a completely different scale. So this is something that I would probably look into potentially growing in our landscape. It's really neat to see that, because typically penstemons have like big thin kind of leaves, as opposed to like a normal shaped type of leaf rather than something that's pine leaf shaped. So this is a plant that I've just recently ordered for Flock, and this is bush clover. And it is not native to the United States, but it is, you can't see, there's no pollinators on this now, but it is a nice place for pollinators. And you could see it kind of just hangs over. It's a little bit more pendulous in structure, and it gets fairly large. In our zone, it would die back or you'd cut it back, but it actually flowers quite late in the season. So we're here in September. This will probably go through October. You can see some of the flowers are waning right now, but oftentimes you'll see this planted like over the side of a rock wall or over a large hill because it just has that pendulous arching shape. And I have a couple places in my mind where I'd like to actually plant this, but this has been something that was on my radar for the last number of months, and I went ahead and actually purchased a plant. So I want you to just take a look in the distance where the sun is shining. They probably so place that muhly grass extremely well. The way that the sun is putting on the inflorescences of that grass, the pinkish purple color. So this is that pink muhly grass. Oh my God, look at it, it's so gorgeous. And then that from the distance, I could already see it, Verbena bonariensis, which is that tall, very purple flower, which again is something I'm gonna choose, even though it's not native to the US. I'm making some exceptions. I will be actually growing that. Catchfly, Licinus coronaria, is also a really beautiful plant. It flowers earlier in the season. It'll send up a long stalk, and oftentimes there'll be, I don't know what color this one is, but oftentimes there'll be whites and pinks and everything along those lines, so that kind of will go well with this color palette. And they do have a white muhly grass, and they also have a reddish muhly grass, so you can kind of get it across that white, pink, purple, red coloration. So I've really been keeping my eye on grasses. I think they offer so much structure and texture to the landscape. And this is like the perfect time to come because this is the fall, and oftentimes this is when a number of the grasses are actually in flower or in seed. What I love about them is they provide this kind of interest almost all year long, especially in the fall and the late winter, because if you don't cut them back, like if you're cutting them back maybe in the spring and you leave them up for the fall and the winter, then they'll have actually some of this beautiful structure and color. So again, this is blue grama grass. This is something that we're sourcing for the meadow. This kind of fluffy cloud-like grass right here, it's past bloom. So it's in seed. It's called purple love grass, Eragrostis spectabilis. And this has really beautiful purple flowers, very similar to that muhly grass that we had just seen. And look, it's just like billows carpets of like of cloud, good cloud stuff right there. So probably just a month ago, it was in purple haze, a nice purple haze color, and that's about as tall as it gets. So again, not one of those really tall grasses. And then this right here, sometimes people will say that it smells like buttered popcorn. I don't know if this cultivar actually smells like that. This is a Sporobolus heterolepis. It's prairie dropseed. This cultivar is called Tara, and that one has a more upright growth. So the Sporobolus heterolepis, the species form, will actually kind of form a little more of an overhang or kind of pendulous look. But again, this grows quite short, and this will be the main matrix for our meadow at Flock. Again, I love coming to Botanic Gardens because they have something for everybody, both indoors and out. This is the pink muhly grass, so this is what we just saw, but the light is hitting it differently, so it looks a little less impressive. But when the sun is waning and you get a sunset and you get that backlight, that's probably the best time when you're actually like photographing or filming some of the grasses, because it's just like absolutely exquisite. So I like how they have these all knitted together. And I think just like if you go straight up grasses, you could get a really beautiful meadow experience. But we're gonna kind of follow around that like 70% grasses, 30% flower matrix. And you could see a little more of how the grasses could work well with some herbaceous perennials. So here, I had mentioned Penstemon before. This is Penstemon digitalis. So you could see that it has a larger, more folious leaf. This is the cultivar that I think that we have in our old nursery reclaimed meadow, Husker Red. And then here you could see that this is I'm not sure what this is. It looks again like another, oh, this is Agastache. So this is giant hyssop. So this is the one that smells like anise and licorice. The bees, yeah, the bees love it. Here is what you see, that little blue stem again. This is a better, you know, kind of view of it because you see it clumped together. And you can see that some grasses are clump forming, and then others, like our lawns or our turf grass, becomes more rhizomatous and it kind of spreads. So you have these kind of two different forms of grass. And what's nice about these is that they stay pretty contained, which is part of the reason why they've become more ornamental grass. That one back there, which I guess we can't go to because this is under construction, that looks like a Panicum virginatum. It might be like a, you know, like the red version because it has these red tips. This one is another nice plant. This is called blazing star. It's a Liatris. So there's all different types of species of Liatris. This is aspera, which is a native plant, but you have spicata, you have a number of others. One popular cultivar is called kobold, which has it has larger flowers, also comes in white. I'm not sure what this is. Okay, so this is little blue stem, Schizachyrium, scoparium, carousel. So you could see that this is kind of past its prime, but still very beautiful if you, you know, are into that kind of look of dried grasses. Another great plant for just structure. So if you want something kind of funky sticking out of the ground, this is, you know, people say this reminds them of yucca, but this is rattlesnake master Eryngium yuccifolium. So you can see, yeah, yuccifolium, it's in the name itself. And it's Eryngium, another Eryngium is very similar to sea holly. So that has very similar structure, and they kind of have blue bracts and kind of that blue purplish hue. And this is another great example. This gets a white flower. This actually is white, but this is a bit past its bloom. So very cool structure if you want that. Could use a more well-draining soil. And here's the pink mullygrass lighting up in the sun again. It's just so gorgeous. You could tell why I really love that grass. Yarrow has become a very popular plant in our beds, but it is not native. It almost feels native because it just grows in, you know, meadows or on roadsides, and it doesn't really overtake the area or anything like that. So it's not an invasive plant, but people use it medicinally. The normal yarrow is a white color, but it has been cultivated for everything from like little buttery yellows to really deep pinks and reds. So I like to pay attention to this area too because this is a very rocky environment. You can see this more rock garden. It has more sharp draining materials. It's built on big boulders and sharp draining sand and stone. And you can see that there are plants growing in here happily. Some plants do not like to get wet feet. So you have some solidago, you have some types of goldenrods, and you have also a lot of these grasses growing with no problem whatsoever. And I kind of have to pay attention to this type of stuff too, because even though like at Flock we have a lot of clay, and which means probably a lot of wet feet for plants, in that nursery area there's a lot of well-draining gravel as well. So a lot of these plants would actually thrive in that situation. And you know, some people would say like, oh, you got a lot of rocks, nothing grows there. But as you could see, plenty of plants actually grow there. So this is another species of bush clover. I think this is the one that we ordered, Lespedeza thunbergii Gibraltar. And you can see it has a little more of a purplish color. And again, this kind of pendulous shape. The bees absolutely love it. And it gives you a really late bloom. So I could picture this kind of either cascading over into the pond or cascading a little bit behind the pond over the berm. We don't really have any kind of rock walls that we could grow this on, but I think it looks absolutely bomb. And this is that pink turtle head again. This one a bit taller. So I don't know if it's just in better conditions and it's grown this tall, or if it's a different cultivar. Looks like the same plant though. And this is actually, doesn't mind a bit wet feet and some shade as well. It could grow in partial shade. Oh, this is the grass that I really like, that I just feel like I was introduced to. I had never seen it before. Probably I didn't see it before because it's not hardy in zone 5, 6 where we grow. So this is would be considered tender perennial. It's called ruby grass, Melinus nerviglumis. And gosh, I really love this. So I think I might grow it as a tender perennial. Feel the tops of these, it's so soft. It's like kitten's feet. It's like the kitten's paws. I love the color, love the structure of the grass down here. I love that it's like kind of this hazy blue-green color, very beautiful. New Zealand sedge has become really popular too. Obviously not a native New Zealand sedge, but it gives that pop of orange and green color too. So if you're kind of creating these drifts and these color palettes, then you could see how those interplay with one another. But the ruby grass, I could definitely see this in the front garden and maybe even in one of the gardens that we're growing, or Bill's garden. I think that is something that's gorgeous, but you'd have to kind of buy it every year or take it out and like have it on your patio or whatever and overwinter it. Fountain grasses are quite popular too. These are called pennisetums, although I think they've been moved over into a different genus altogether. But people often call them like kitten's tails or cat's tails or things along those lines because they do really look like that. And we've planted up a couple of the pennisetums in our there's just too many great cultivars to say that you don't want to say no to. So, and they look so cool again with the backlit. And this looks more like a Mediterranean garden. So if you just take a little quick scan of this, you'll see all these blue-green plants that really like sharp drainage, a lot of sun. You have your rosemaries, you have your lavenders.
By sharp drainage.
Sharp drainage basically means that it drains well. So sharp drainage often means that it's like a little stony or sandy mixture. You don't want something with too much compost that like holds on to the water moisture. A lot of the times those plants are not accustomed to it and their roots will rot. But oftentimes,
this is escaping.
I know, it's great.
It's like a little carpet.
And I think, so this one is the Silver Falls, Dichondria argentea.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Just pick it up. It's like a doormat.
I like the coloration of this. We've brought in a lot of that blue kind of color, the sage. And this is the type of plants that you like because it smells really nice. I like the Japanese gardens because there's a lot of thought that goes into these gardens about the journey, about where you would want to reflect, some more contemplative spaces, and also the structure of the plants. They're not just like willy-nilly and unkempt. A lot of them are really well maintained, or, you know, kind of like the idea of bonsai in the landscape, which has a name to it, but I don't know what that name is. And so I really like the look of these. And a lot of the landscape planting in our area had some kind of Japanese influence, especially with the Acer palmatums and some of the conifers. So I like to kind of maintain some of that inspiration and bring it back in full force at Flock. Even the texture of the bark here for this birch, it's really pretty. And again, that will have like winter interest even when all the leaves fall off the trees. The big stones too that you could like sit on. The idea behind these bridges, the reason why they have such an arc or an arch is because it's there to represent like the hardship of life. That life is not always that easy. It's not always on a straight plane. And so even a bridge that has this kind of almost like arch that you wouldn't normally see on a bridge, the whole purpose is to make it a little harder to walk on. So you're walking up at an angle, and it's there to serve as a reflection and a metaphor for life. These are often the bridges that led to the tea house. And even in a tea house, the doorway was lowered to the point that you actually had to bend as if in a humble nature and take off your shoes and everything and then just go into a tea house. They were not meant to be elaborate or anything. It was just meant to put all your ego, all of that aside, and just be humble in life and to recognize that life is never that easy. So if you see, these are fall blooming crocuses. These are bulb plants. And this is very similar to what we're actually going to be doing, although we're doing spring and summer blooming bulbs within our lawn. So that'll look really nice. It'll provide a place for pollinators in late winter and early spring into the early summer months as well. So we were walking here the other day and we really loved just some of the architecture of these buildings. Again, just the brickwork, stonework, the slate roofs in some cases, the stone pathways. This is a real inspiration for us because we want to do a stone pathway very similar to this, albeit with a different stone, something a little darker, more native to our environment. But then if you see this house over here, it's really cool. We love how the slat roofing, the little wood slat roofing, works its way down the house. So it's like almost like a third of the house, if not half of the house. So we love the look of this house, just how that has a wooden slat roofing that basically comes down to about a third or a half of the house. And just the nice little cottage garden with, I believe this is slate, because this is all the color that slate stones come in. You get that yogurty purple, that dark purple pinks, deep blues, grays, even iron colored, ferrous colored stones. So there's something just really charming about this whole architecture and the landscaping around this building. So this is a fabulous shrub. I believe this is a native plant, Polycarpa. It's called beautyberry. This one has little white berries, but if you come over here, this is what you typically see, which is so unusual for a color of a plant. But look at this purple beautyberry. So recently just purchased this. Again, it has a nice little pendulous shape. What we found out is that somebody said that it grows well with others that are like it. So I only have one. Might actually have to get 2 or 3 within the environment, but you can see it's a low-lying shrub. Gets those really interesting color of berries, in the tail end of the year, so during the fall, which is pretty neat. Pretty neat to see that shock of color. Here's their house plants. They're Thaumatophyllum sprucianum, or maybe still Philodendron sprucianum as we found out. And the Calathea orbifolia, Japortia orbifolia now. And then even a variegated Monstera deliciosa right out in the open. Love this one. This is Alocasia reginula. This one says cultivar black velvet. I've always known it as reginula. Monstera adansonii, and then a Splenium nidus, bird's nest worm, and this is a Dracaena. This cultivar is called Ray of Sunshine. Well, I think that's all we have time for before we have to get off onto our next adventure. So let's wrap it up here.
Interested in developing a deeper relationship with the people and plants around you? Then check out my book, How to Make a Plant Love You. Cultivate green space in your home and heart. More information up on my blog at homesteadbrooklyn.com. And if you're looking for more tactical plant care, then you could turn to the Houseplant Masterclass, which is the first online audiovisual course on houseplant cultivation, care, maintenance, and more at houseplantmasterclass.com. And if you're seeking more information about gardening outdoors and homesteading in the country, then check out our new channel over at Flock Finger Lakes.